Well, Martin, first of all, I do appreciate your time, and I gotta ask you, first of all, when did you join the Army, and what made you want to join the Army?
I enlisted in the Army in 1986, shortly after I graduated from college. I was in a position where I needed somebody to slap me in the back of the head and get me pointed in the right direction, and I was self-aware enough to realize that, thankfully. So I figured the military was the best course of action for me to take in order to achieve that.
And was it OCS or did you went through?
I initially went. I was an enlisted 11 Bravo infantryman. Had the opportunity to go to jump school and airborne school, and then I served as a drill corporal at Fort Benning, Georgia, prior to being commissioned.
Okay. And you did, so it was infantry time.
I did. I was initially an infantryman.
Yes, indeed. So, and then when did your active duty time stop? And then when did you do stuff? You said you did reserve stuff, and then when did all that end?
Yes, I was commissioned in 1987. I was what's called branch detail, where I did my lieutenant junior captain time in combat arms, which in this case was field artillery. I transitioned over to the intelligence branch after I made captain, and I served in that capacity, captain through lieutenant colonel.
And so when did your old military career wrap up? Like when you said, hey, this is it?
Well, I came off active duty initially in 1999 and went on reserve status, and then 9/11 happened, and I was mobilized for 2 years, 2001 to 2003, and then came off active duty in 2003. And then went into the reserve, and I was discharged from the reserve in 2010.
So overall, if you add your reserve time, you've had a career of 25 years?
About 24. 24 and some change.
Yeah, we'll say 25. That sounds good.
It sounds better.
Just talk about the importance of serving your country, wearing the uniform, being a member of the military.
It's very important because our nation depends upon peace through strength, and that's what our military provides. All the services combined together provide that peace through strength. I think I would like to see personally every citizen serve a couple of years on active duty to get a true appreciation of what our service members go through, especially on a deployment, being away from their family and living under austere conditions.
So when you look at the military and the things, what do you feel is the biggest thing you learned about yourself when you were in the military?
The military taught me self-discipline. It taught me respect for authority. It taught me how to use Clint Eastwood's line in one of his movies, improvise, overcome, and adapt, because you're thrown into situations where there's no textbook answer or templated response. You have to think on your feet, and you have to apply analytical and problem-solving skills to achieve the mission you're given.
So other than the infantry and intelligence, any other jobs or anything you had while you were there?
Well, I was an artilleryman, and I had, I think, 5 deployments. I did Desert Shield, Desert Storm as a platoon leader with 18th Airborne Corps. A year later, I went back as on a mobile training team. We taught the Bahraini military how to use the multiple launch rocket system. Went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, to support the Cuban migrant operations that were going on down there. I was the headquarters commandant. I ran the U.S. Forces camp for the Cuban side of the operation. Next deployment, Bosnia, I went over with the National Intelligence Support Team to Sarajevo to provide support to Stabilization Force, which was the NATO operation that was going on over there to provide stability in the Balkans. And then my final deployment was to Israel for Operation Desert Fox. I went over again with a National Intelligence Support Team to Tel Aviv to support a task force that had been deployed over there.
Now, the biggest thing that, looking at your career post-military, you still have your hand actively in the military with two things that you're heavily involved with. And the first thing I just want to talk about and take up time with is the honor flight. Talk about, when did you get involved with that? What made you want to get involved with it? And just the importance of this organization and this program.
I was director of facilities and risk management at the National D-Day Memorial for about 13 years, and that's how I became acquainted with the Honor Flight organization. One of the groups would come through twice a year, and so I got to know about them a little bit. And then 2014 was the 70th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. Jeff Miller, who is one of the co-founders of the Honor Flight Network, was working with us to bring D-Day and World War II veterans up to that event. We eventually got about 300 up there. Jeff and I got to be pretty well acquainted, and he invited me to come up to the Honor Flight Summit, or the annual conference in Baltimore, to pitch the D-Day Memorial. So I did that for a couple years, and while I was up there one year, I pulled up the hub map. A hub is, of course, a regional chapter that covers a geographical area. And there was one in Northern Virginia, there was one in Tidewater, but there was a big hole in the rest of Virginia. So I reached out to Jeff and I said, hey, I see an unmet need. What do you think about me starting a hub? And he said, go for it. I will support you in any way I can. So myself and one of my co-workers from the D-Day Memorial, Maggie Hartley, we co-founded the hub, and we just took off from there.
What year was that, the start of the hub?
We finally got through all of the IRS nightmare, 2018, early 2018, because each hub has to be chartered by the national organization, and you have to become incorporated as a non-stock corporation in your state of residence, of course, in our case, Virginia. And then you have to get your 501c3 nonprofit through the IRS. And each hub is semi-autonomous. They're responsible for their own trip planning, marketing, fundraising, so forth and so on.
I noticed something, when I went on it with you, I noticed just the importance of it for the veterans that go, and just the organization. And I noticed that you get a lot of it personally because you want to help. It's like you're helping your fellow veteran and all that. But overall, what does this mean to the veterans that go, and what does this mean to you personally, that you are taking part in living out a dream that some of these veterans are getting to have, and see these memorials that are dedicated to them?
Well, a lot of the vets, ladies and gentlemen that go on the trip, have not received thanks, appreciation, healing, or closure from some of the things that they dealt with in their military service. And this is especially true for the Vietnam era veterans. Those folks came back and they were treated very poorly by their fellow citizens. I've witnessed a Vietnam vet, retired police officer, gruff, tough, big guy, just burst out bawling when a 10-year-old kid handed him a letter. That's the power of Honor Flight.
And the emotion, I can feel it in you right now. What is, if there, and this might be a hard thing to even ask, we're talking about the planning and everything else. What is your most favorite part of this, in taking part and helping and doing all this?
I don't have a favorite part. I mean, it's a process where we do 2 trips a year, weekend bus trips. So basically, when one trip ends, I start planning for the next one. So the trip planning is a piece of it, making sure we have enough available funding to cover the expenses for the trip. But I think the most personally rewarding thing is the trip itself, because as you know, when everyone first gets on the bus, a lot of them don't know each other. And after 3 days in a metal box with wheels, you get on the bus, a bunch of strangers, and you get off a family, basically. And all of that happens within a very compressed period of time. I think the most rewarding thing for me is when we get back and we do the pass the mic ceremony, because then that's when you get the feedback from the veterans, the guardians, the medical folks, and the staff and other volunteers that took part in the trip, and that makes it all worthwhile.
The biggest thing too, I mean, so because we're roughly a couple of months out from the April's honor flight, and I know, I think you said roughly you take right around, well, I want to say, is it 20 veterans, or I might be off on that number?
20 is a target, but what invariably happens is I'll have a full bus 2 weeks out, and then I'll start getting phone calls where, I need shoulder surgery, or my niece is getting married, or yada, yada, various reasons for not being able to go. So we have a waiting list, and so I'll just start hitting the waiting list. Sometimes it works out where they have the flexibility, in terms of time to go on the trip. Sometimes, it doesn't. So we've taken as many as 18 and as few as 12. So if I got one vet that is going to go, I'll take him or her. That's just the way it is.
That's good stuff. So, so as at this point, because like I said, we're a couple months out, where do we stand? I mean, is it pretty much everything's locked in, everything's planned, or you still some more moving pieces, or where are we?
I'm waiting to hear back from the Marine Corps Silent Drill Platoon as to whether or not they're going to be able to perform for us at Iwo Jima Memorial. If they are, then I have to get a public gathering permit from the National Park Service. If not, I don't have to worry about that. So, I mean, as far as the logistics of the trip, the transportation, the food, the lodging, all of that's locked in. It's just a question of some of the itinerary, specifics of the itinerary in the DC area.
You mentioned food. I mean, you won't go hungry on this trip.
No, I tell everybody, if at any point during the trip you're hungry, it's your own fault. Because, if we're not on a bus or at a memorial, we're pretty much eating.
Yeah, and you can't beat that.
No.
This thing. And then another thing, you're involved with Team Rubicon. If you could give a breakdown on that, when did you get involved in that? What is it? And just what made you want to get a part of that?
Team Rubicon's a primarily veteran-led organization that responds to disasters, simply put. It's pretty much all volunteer organization, made up mainly of vets, a smaller percentage of first responders, and then some civilians. I got involved, or I became aware of it in 2018 when the gentleman who was the metro for the Roanoke area came down to the D-Day Memorial and said, "Hey, you want some free labor to do service projects?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he said, "Well, you're a vet, right?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you need to join our organization." Well, at that time I was, I had a bunch of irons in the fire. I was on the school board, working full time and doing honor flight stuff. So fast forward, I think it was 2021, I got an email out of the blue that said, "Hey, come on down to Louisiana and help us recover from Hurricane Ida." So I said, "Okay." So I flew on down there, and next thing I know, I'm on a roof, tarping a roof, and mucking out a house, ripping out rotten sheetrock and wet rugs and things like that. And I got hooked. And so I started taking their online courses, then started taking their in-person courses. I got certified as an instructor. I teach 3 classes for them in various places. And then I got involved in the local leadership, where I'm the field readiness coordinator for the Blue Ridge Metro, which covers Roanoke and part of southwestern Virginia. I think it goes up to Highland County. So I'm in charge of making sure that we have trained personnel available to respond to disasters, not only in our area, but also prepared to deploy to other areas. So.
I guess the thing is that it seems like to me, ever since you've been a veteran, you still are serving. You're still giving back to your fellow veterans and being a part of a veteran. How special and important is it to do these things for you, that you're still helping out fellow men and women who have served, and then also serving under Team Rubicon?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's a continuation of my service from active duty. I'm still working with the same demographic, the same group of folks. And you know as well as I do, as a vet, there's a special bond that gets established through shared misery. And so, when I came off active duty, that was a hole in my life, and we talked about that a little bit. So, getting back into working directly with those of like mind, veterans, and also I chased deployments when I was on active duty. So Team Rubicon has filled that void for me too, by providing the opportunity to go to places and help people that on the worst day of their lives, basically. So,
what is, looking at your life as a whole, as a military member and a veteran, just hearing you just give back and doing this is just so rewarding, I mean, it's awesome to see what you're doing. It's very rewarding. And I'm sure you probably inspire a lot of other veterans to do what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know that for a fact, but, I would hope so. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is grow the membership of Team Rubicon here in the Roanoke area, Roanoke, Bedford, Lexington, those cities and the counties surrounding us. I would like to get some more vets involved in Rubicon so that we can build capacity here to respond to a disaster should we be hit with one.
How many local members are in?
I think we have 306 on the books. I think a little over 100 are deployable. So, I mean, and that's not to say that the other ones are not participating, because you don't have to be deployable to do local service projects. So, if you want to be part of Rubicon, but you don't want to go to, really austere conditioned places, you can do things. You can do service projects here locally. And, I would encourage anybody who is interested in either Honor Flight or Team Rubicon to contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you. I don't know if you can give.
Yeah, I mean,
give out my email address.
Oh yeah, so if anyone's interested, they can get a hold of you through your email or something like that.
Yep.
So, is there anything you'd like to say or stress, or anything that I missed, or about your military career and your career after the military?
No, I think we covered it pretty comprehensively. I would just sum everything up by saying, military service is an honorable profession, and not only are you giving to your country's giving something to you in terms of life skills and, vocational skills that you can apply in the civilian world as well.
Wow, that's good stuff. Well, Martin, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff.
Anytime.
Good stuff. There you go.